How is everyone doing? Welcome to part 3 of this massive butcher's block build. Now, we left off, we had just taped down our table to avoid gluing our entire butcher's block onto the table. So it's really just a matter of getting into the glue up. So I'll meet you guys over at the taped over table. Well, we're back. Now, I'm really praying this masking tape works. I've used it before, and to the best of my knowledge, it doesn't tend to stick to wood glue, but if it does, we are gonna have a pretty substantial problem. And I will probably just end up destroying this entire workbench because it's definitely worth less than this butcher's block. Other thing, upon further inspection, there is actually a little bit of a valley in the middle of this worktop. So I went ahead and made these with masking tape on the end. I'm gonna clamp these to the edges to hopefully keep it straight, and these are perfectly straight. So I think there's really nothing left to do but go for the glue up. I hate to say surprisingly, but surprisingly the glue up went off without a hitch. I mean, there's one panel that we have right here, and if I had to guess, it's maybe a 32nd of an inch out of alignment. The rest of them, though, are perfectly flat. I mean, really happy with this. I don't know if I got enough clamping pressure with these. We didn't get a whole lot of glue seep out. It's a little bit concerning, but I think we'll be okay. I did get some, just not as much as I usually want. But other than that, yeah, it went really well. So we're gonna leave this here 24 hours, then we're gonna take this off. Hopefully it has not glued itself to my workbench, and then we will start sanding, which is it's gonna really suck. It's gonna suck a lot. We're gonna do it. That's what we do here, okay? We do a good job. Good morning, everyone. All right, we have let this guy dry up. We took off the clamps. It looks awesome. It's still super flat. And I know I mentioned in the last clip that I'm gonna start off by sanding. I don't think I'm going to do that. Shocker, I'm changing the plan. Instead, what's gonna happen is we are gonna try to square this thing up on the table saw. Now, I have to consider the fact that I do not have a flat reference edge. I did have one side right here, which I labeled F. You may be able to see it on camera, you may not. But that was kind of my flatter side, and I let this one be sort of the messed up one on the glue up. What we're gonna do is we're going to take this, which is very straight. We are gonna square it up so that we have a reference angle. I am then going to drill in holes here and put screws on either side, which will keep it in place. That way I have one flat reference side, and I can fully square up this side on the table saw. Now, I'm sure you're probably a little worried, right? You're thinking, hey, why are we putting screws in this beautiful butcher's block? And I'll tell you why. Because the length is 58 inches. I intentionally left it a little bit long to account for any kind of errors and also for stuff like this. So I'm gonna drill in on either side, maybe an inch or two in, and it's not gonna be a problem because that's gonna end up getting cut off anyway. So let's go ahead and drill this in and make our way over to the table saw with this bad boy. So, quick note to verify that I am not in fact an idiot. You're probably thinking, okay, well, why don't you just clamp this on the edge as opposed to drilling screws in? And it's because the bottom of the clamp is going to stick out, and so it's not going to be able to slide across the tabletop of the table saw. So that's why. Anyway, let's get drilling. Okay, we got it done. So let's get this thing over to the table saw somehow. Oh yeah, that stuff
obligated to tell you not to try this at home, but in all honesty, don't try this anywhere. There's no world where this is a good idea, but we're gonna do it anyway. Let's get to it. That was so sketchy. Wow, that was like easily the sketchiest cut I've ever done on a table saw. Surprisingly, I mean, there were a couple moments where I thought I was gonna lose it, but we're totally flat. So the cut was perfect somehow. I didn't think that it would be. But we're completely flat. We have a total width of 26 and 1/16, which is perfect because we have the sand. So now we just have to square up these edges, and I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to avoid the table saw at all costs. So we'll see. Okay, as I mentioned, we're going to avoid the table saw at all costs. I just don't think there's any possible way that I can cross cut this on the table saw. We're going to go back to the circular saw. I tried it earlier in the video, and it didn't really work, but that was before everything was planed down and flat, and I think we were just trimming off the end, so it had a tendency to kind of shake out. Because we're taking off a little bit more material and this surface is totally flat, I think we might be able to get away with using this. I'm gonna do a test cut and just take off a little bit of material at the end and see if we can get it true and square, and if we can, then we're gonna go this route. If not, then back to the drawing board. As I'm sure you noticed, that was an abject failure. My circular saw kind of started running out of power. I think maybe the solution would be unplugging a lot of things in the shop that are using the same outlet, because I think maybe it's not getting enough amperage. Either that or it's just not a strong enough circular saw. I mean, this is thick material. So yeah, our cut started going kind of sideways here. So we're gonna have to go back to the drawing board and figure out a different way to square this up. But that sucks because it was cutting so well for a little bit. Also, I'm just noticing that the blade isn't even big enough. Oh, it didn't go all the way through. So this was literally never gonna work. It's a good thing I didn't go to Final Dimensions with that one. Oh, I hate my life. I have to do it on the table saw. I was thinking there's literally nothing else. No other way that I can do it. I just don't think there's any possible way. I can take it over the miter station, and then I think it has like a 12-inch swing maybe. So if I did that, and then I flipped it, and then tried to cut from the other side, still wouldn't cut all the way through. And also it's hard to line up this cuts perfectly. There's no other way for me to do this. I mean, what am I gonna use, a scroll saw? Probably not a good call. We gotta do this on the table saw. Do a little cross cut. No problem. Super easy. Okay, let's run through our dilemma using this little piece of plywood as a scaled down version of our butcher's block. So let's orient ourselves. We have this edge and this edge fully parallel with one another. Now we need to make 90-degree cuts on both ends to get it perfectly squared up. The easiest way to do that is with a cross cut. So we have this little miter gauge here, and it's 90 degrees in relation to our table saw blade. So if we just put this up flush against it and then run it through, bam, we have perfectly squared up corners. We cannot do that with this butcher's block. It is far too large. It is never ever going to give us an accurate cut. So where does that leave us? Well, it basically means we have to do it the same way that we squared up these longer edges, by creating a right and true reference edge to guide against the table saw fence. A couple issues with that. The first issue is that we are going to need to cut the same side that our fake reference edge is on, right? So when we were doing these long cuts, we had our fake edge here, and
we were able to use the fake edge against the fence and then cut the other side. We can't do that. What we have to do is create our fake edge here, set our fence incredibly close, and then have the cut go on the inside. So what that's gonna do is once we cut through it, our reference edge is just gonna detach from the piece. Now, we can't do it the same way as we did before because this fence does not slide back enough. It needs to slide back like 58 inches in order for us to be able to cut the other side. So I need to figure out whether or not I can even do that accurately and then go from there. Our second big obstacle is the fact that once we have made a 90-degree cut on one side, we won't be able to use that side as a reference for the other side. So whereas with the longer cuts, we made one perfect cut and then our opposing cut matched or mirrored, I guess I should say, this other cut perfectly. We can't really do that. So we're gonna have to make two identical cuts, and it's always really tough when you can't use the opposing side as a reference face. So we're gonna have to do two perfect cuts somehow. So let's go back to the drawing board. Okay, I'm gonna test the initial idea that I had, which is basically creating our false edge and then cutting and having a false edge be on the inside of the blade. I suspect it won't work, but we've kind of already messed up one side, so it wouldn't hurt to try and see if we can get it accurate. And if not, then we're just gonna have to go back and think about doing it some other way. So let's give that a try. Again, do not try this at home. There is a very serious risk of injury, of you get really bad kickback, etc. So don't try this at home. It's very dumb. Let's do it. A few clips ago, I stated that I was about to make the most dangerous or sketchy cut of my woodworking career. I have to correct that record because this was by far the sketchiest thing I've ever done. I didn't even film doing the other side because I was just like all frazzled and turned around, but it worked. It actually worked. I can't believe it. We got our squares here. We're squared up on every side. We're looking perfect. So yeah, we just have to do a lot of sanding now. There's a couple other things that I want to add. I'm gonna probably do C-channels underneath to prevent any kind of warping in the future. But for now, we're gonna focus on getting this thing sanded down. Okay, we are nice and sanded down. I didn't include all of it in the time lapse because the only thing more boring than sanding is watching someone sand. But it's very time consuming. We have it nice and smooth. I still have to water treat it. But the next step is going to be adding a round over to the top, which is what the client wants. So let's get to it. Okay, we added a really lovely round over on the other side of this. I went ahead and flipped it over because at this point we have to go to our next stage. Now these are some steel C-channels that I bought. I got 4 of them. The idea is to inlay these so that it's flush with the countertop and then screw them in place. My hope is that what it will do is prevent any kind of future warping. So when you have a butcher's block that's this huge and comprised of so many different pieces of wood, there's a really good chance that something is going to warp in the future. This should give it some room to move seasonally, but also help keep it more or less flat. So let's cut these down to the size that we want, and then let's whip the router out and pray that I don't destroy this entire butcher's block. So let's do it. Okay, we cut these down to our desired size. I also went ahead and I drilled some holes in here for the screws that I got. So this is kind of what we're going for, just along the length of the whole thing. We obviously don't want this poking out, right? Because it's gonna be flush on top of the cabinet. So these need to get inlaid. Let's get out the router and get to it. Okay, that was terrifying, but it went off pretty well, but now I have a weird issue. So I didn't have any dust collection when I was doing the routing, so there's just really like densely packed sawdust in here. And the only way that I can get it out is doing this with a chisel. And that got, just there, that loosened up maybe like an inch. Maybe about an inch of the packed sawdust, and I have to do all this. So I have a really dumb idea. I'm gonna try using the reciprocating saw, see if I can get it tightly enough that that it kind of loosens it up and I can get it out with just a vacuum. We'll see how it goes. All right, it turned out that the reciprocating saw was in fact a very dumb idea. It did not work. What did end up working was I just used a router with a very thin bit and ran over the areas that was sort of clogged up. That loosened it up enough to follow with the vacuum, we got it out of there. I've done a little more cleanup on these guys. So our inlays, or I guess our C-channels, fit in here nicely, like so. So let's go ahead and countersink these and install them. Okay, I finally got these in. I was gonna use my ratchet set, but it just didn't fit. I didn't have the correct size, so I ended up having to use an adjustable wrench, which really sucked, and it was tough to get them tight, but we did. We got them down. I also managed to bleed rather profusely on this thing from a cut that I sustained yesterday while sanding. So, Dave, Courtney, if you're watching this, I'm sorry I bled all over your butcher's block. I did sand it off. I did tin it off, and it was on the bottom, so there's that. But I am still sorry for bleeding all over your butcher's block. Guys, we are done. We're done. The only thing left is the money shot, baby. What everyone clicked on this video for. We're gonna put some finish on it. It's what makes every project, every awful moment of the project worth it. It's when you get to slather some oil all over there, make it beautiful, and ship it off to a very happy client, I hope. So, without further ado, let's get to the money.
if you've been following along throughout this 3-part series, thank you so much, truly from the bottom of my heart, for taking the time to watch these videos. I love making them, and I love hopefully getting the opportunity to teach a couple things to people who may not be into woodworking. But yeah, I had so much fun building this, but I'm not gonna lie, it was so much more complicated than just an end grain cutting board. I didn't realize how the size would just completely alter the steps I would have to take to make this thing happen. But we did it. I'm very proud of it. I'm very pleased with the results, and thank you guys again so much for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next video.